The past offers a wide variety of heroic warriors and formidable drinkers to talk about. But there's one particular group of badasses that fascinates metalheads and historians alike. Vikings. Egg-bearing, meat-downing barbarians that come from the north to pillage and plunder. Numerous bands from all kinds of subgenres include Viking folklore as well as partly misconceived lifestyle elements
What are those?
in their lyrics. This great bandwidth of genres makes it difficult to establish something like the term Viking metal, but if you took all the bands that ever mentioned a Viking in their songs, there's one that stands out by far. A melodic death metal band from Sweden called Amon Amarth. These metal giants have tons of interesting historic references in their songs, but one among the most impressive, as well as probably little known, is a ballad from the newest album Berserker that came out in 2019, and the title of the album is the exact setting for the song as well. The Berserker at Stamford Bridge. Before we can start analyzing the lyrics of the song, we should zoom out and take a look at the greater setting. When at the beginning of the year 1066, the English king Edward the Confessor died, the land was left without a successor to follow in his place. The greedy eyes of a few European rulers wandered toward the throne of the islands, among them a certain king of Norway, whom we've met in his youth in a previous video. Harald Hardrada. In order to claim the English crown, he assembled 300 ships to carry his army of about 8,000 men towards Britain's coast, where he arrived in September 1066. Once he reached the shore, he forged an alliance with Tostig Godwinson, who was the brother of Harold Godwinson. Harold Godwinson had been elected king following Edward's death in January, and the two brothers weren't exactly fans of each other. Tostig used to be Earl of Northumbria, but was exiled in 1065. For this reason, he gladly supported Hardrada against his much-hated king brother. A few days later, on the 20th of September, the combined forces of Norway and Tostig Godwinson defeated a smaller English force at York, where they plundered and then withdrew shortly afterwards. It must have been at about this time that Harold Godwinson, the elected king, was informed of Hardrada's landing on the islands. Shocked by the sudden news of invasion, he quickly mobilized his army from southern England, where he had been waiting for another invasion from France. But the French didn't show, and the Norwegians in the north were the more pressing issue. Now, who would have guessed that England actually feared an invasion once in their history, rather than invading the entire rest of the world? Anyways, Harold Godwinson wouldn't tolerate any intruders upon his land, and so he forced his troops to march all the way to Yorkshire as fast as possible. The journey took them about 4 days, which is really impressive, because even modern navigation services estimate about 65 hours straight walking for this distance. To reach the Norwegian army this quickly, they had to march at least some part at night. This is where our song begins. The first verse, written from the perspective of an Englishman, also informs us about the fact that the Norwegians were outnumbered 2 to 1, as well as the location of the battle. Stamford Bridge, a small village in the East Riding of Yorkshire, mainly functioning as a bridge over the Derwent River. The invaders had settled there, thinking themselves in safety, since they weren't aware of any English troops in their surroundings. The look on their faces must have been pretty dumb when they woke up on the 25th of September to see 15,000 hostile soldiers looking down at them. The surprise they were caught in is described in the following part of the song, now from the eyes of a Norseman. Before we can get to the real action, the English forces sent out a rider to offer Tostig to switch sides, as described by Snorri Sturluson. Tostig turned down the offer, and when Hardrada asked him if he knew the rider, who had left an impression on him, he simply replied that it was Harold Godwinson, the king himself. I liked the idea of this interaction, but it was left out of the song completely, probably because it was written by the same guy who told us about two giant wolves chasing and eating Moon and Sun. There's another song on the album about those two. Go check it out if you're interested. Alright, on with the Berserker. Luckily for the Scandinavians, they were still separated from the English by the Derwent River, and the only way across the stream was a small bridge inside the village. According to the song and different stories of the battle, a single Norwegian man marched towards the bridge and stood on it like he was some sort of Gandalf in the Mines of Moria. It is likely that he bore a Dane axe, the characteristic weapon of Vikings. Why these axes were so popular among Norsemen, I hear you ask? Well, we already covered that in the Turisas video, so go check that out if you haven't already. The next verse switches back to the English, who weren't much impressed with the resistance and went on with the attack. The limited space of the bridge, however, didn't allow them to make use of their great numbers. They had to enter the bridge one by one, and were literally picked off by the axe-wielding warrior. He took the lives of 40 enemy soldiers and would have killed more if the English commanders hadn't watched the second Hobbit movie, because I don't know where else they would have gotten an idea like this. I also don't know why Amon Amarth sings of 4 men. The facts, however, are that the Berserker was impaled from below, but an English soldier drifted beneath the bridge and thrust his spear through the floorboards. Now the bridge was free to pass, but the brave and very effective last stand gave the Norwegian army enough time to enter the famous shield wall formation that inspired yet another song on the Berserker album. In the end, the additional prep time was not enough to outweigh the overwhelming disadvantages in numbers, and Harold Hardrada, as well as Tostig Godwinson, were killed in the battle, along with 8,000 of their warriors. Only 24 of the 300 ships that set out to conquer England would return to Norway. This eradication of an entire army is often viewed as the ending point of the so-called Viking era. After the English victory, Harold Godwinson led his troops back to the south, where he faced William, Duke of the Normandy. Apparently, all the marching had exhausted his troops, because this time he was defeated and killed at the Battle of Hastings. Actually, the battle with the Norwegians was so draining for the English that their doom was inevitable, so you could say the Berserkers' resistance set off a chain of events that eventually led to the Norman conquest of England. But that's a topic for another video. What remains to be said is that the story of the Berserker at Stamford Bridge is just that, a story. It is very likely that the events took place in this way or another, but they were probably altered a few times as the story was told. However, I like to believe the narration is true, because it's a kick-ass song and an impressive story. So, thanks for listening. I hope you liked the video and learned something new. If so, please check out the other history and metal videos, and consider subscribing to the Heavy Magic crew. As we are still a very small channel, liking and sharing the video really helps us out, and we are happy about any comments you might have. See you next time, and until then, stay true.